Tonight, before you fall asleep, you are going to do something older than your whole species, and you will not even notice you are doing it. You are going to make yourself safe. Maybe you will lock a door. Maybe you will turn off a light and pull a blanket up under your chin. And then you will let go. You will shut your eyes and hand over control of your body to the dark. For you, that is nothing. For almost every human who ever lived, it was the single most dangerous thing they did all day. No doors. No locks. Nothing solid between a sleeping body and the things that hunted after sundown. Just bare skin. A little warmth, and a pair of closed eyes out in the open dark. And something was almost always awake out there. Something with far better eyes than yours. Something that could smell you breathing from across a valley. So how did we ever pull it off? How did a soft animal that goes blind and helpless for hours every single night last long enough to take over the entire planet? It was never one clever invention that saved us. It was a whole stack of them, piled up over an almost unimaginable stretch of time. And the very first clue to how it started is sitting inside a skull with two neat holes punched clean through the back of it. Picture yourself lying on your side on bare ground. The heat of the day is leaving the earth, and you can feel the cold starting to come up through the dirt into your ribs. Your breathing slows down. Your muscles let go, one at a time, until your hand would not close into a fist, even if you told it to. Behind your eyelids, your eyes begin to drift. You have just crossed the line into deep sleep. And at that exact moment, your body quietly stops standing guard over itself. Sleep is the strangest bet any animal makes. To sleep is to switch yourself off on purpose. You stop watching. You mostly stop hearing. You give up the one move that every hunted creature on Earth depends on, which is the power to run the instant something goes wrong. Look at how other animals handle it. A gazelle sleeps in short, jumpy little bursts. Muscles half loaded the whole time, ready to detonate into a sprint. A dolphin shuts down only one half of its brain at a time, so the other half can keep it swimming and breathing and watching the water, all across the animal world. Sleep gets treated like a loaded weapon that has to be held very, very carefully. And then there is us. Here is the part that should stop you cold. Among the primates, scientists have studied the monkeys and apes and every close relative we have. Humans sleep the least. We run our whole lives on fewer hours than any of them. But the sleep we do get, we take hard. Our nights are short, intense, and unusually rich in the vivid dreaming stage. The one where the eyes flick back and forth beneath the lids. And when a human body sinks down into its deepest sleep, waking it back up in a hurry is not easy. Sit with what that actually means. A human at night was not some light, twitchy sleeper springing awake at every snapped branch. That body went down deep, heavy, slow to surface, slow to move. And it went down the deepest at the exact hours when the world outside was at its hungriest. Now look at what was sharing that dark with them. A leopard sees at night on a level your eyes will never touch. It moves across dry ground without making a sound. It can drag a body its own weight straight up the trunk of a tree with the kill hanging from its jaws. A hyena is nothing like the goofy, giggling scavenger from the cartoons. Real hyenas hunt in the dark, in coordinated packs, with a bite strong enough to split a leg bone open like dry wood. Lions do a huge share of their killing after sundown for one simple reason. The night belongs to them. And they know it. Now set a human against all of that. No claws worth mentioning. No fangs. Once the sun is gone, almost no night vision at all. A top sprinting speed that a lion runs down in 3 or 4 strides. A soft body that bruises when it bumps a rock in the dark. During the daytime, out in the open, a smart group of humans working together could hold its ground. But at night, lying flat, dropping off one by one into that deep, heavy sleep, that same clever group melted into a row of warm, quiet, defenseless shapes laid out on the dirt. We love to tell our own story as the story of hunters. The spear in the hand, the great chase across the plain. Mankind standing proud at the top of the food chain. And some of that is real. Later on, in the daylight. But for most of the long road to becoming human, our kind was not sitting on top of anything. They were meat that happened to walk upright, small, slow, and very much on the menu. When the sun went down, every edge they owned went down with it. The dark flipped the entire board. The hunters turned back into the hunted, and they knew it, because the proof of what happened to the ones who guessed wrong was lying right there in the caves with them. There is a place in South Africa called Swartkrans. It is a cave system, and it has handed over some of the richest fossil ground anywhere on Earth for the early chapters of the human story. And down in that ground, researchers found a skull, a child, going by the bone. Not a modern child, but a young one from one of our ancient relatives, a branch of the wider human family that shared that dangerous world. There were 2 holes in it. 2 clean, round punctures set into the back of the skull, side by side, a fixed distance apart for a while. Those holes were a puzzle. Then somebody had the idea to hold them up against the lower jaw of a leopard from the very same era. The 2 long canine fangs on the bottom of that jaw, the killing teeth, slid right into the 2 holes. The spacing lined up. The size lined up. It was a perfect match. That child had been killed by a bite straight through the skull. And a leopard has one very particular habit after a kill. It hauls the body up into the branches of a tree to eat in peace, safe from the lions and hyenas that would happily rob it. Season after season, century after century, the scraps from those feeding trees dropped down into the cracks in the rock below. Baunis, teeth, skulls, members of the wider human family, falling into the dark of the cave one meal at a time. So, a great many of those famous caves stuffed with early human fossils were never cozy little homesteads at all. They were dining rooms, and we were not the ones doing the eating. That is where this whole story truly begins. For an enormous stretch of our past, when the light drained out of the sky, we were prey, plain and simple. Everything humans would go on to build to get through the night. Every trick and tool and habit we are about to walk through got stacked on top of that one cold fact. And it started with a question so small it barely sounds like a question. Long before the first useful fire, long before any weapon meant anything in the dark, a little band of humans stood in the last of the fading light and had to answer it fast. Where do we lie down tonight? The sun is 20 minutes from gone, and the group has not picked a place to sleep. You can feel the pressure of it. The light is bleeding out of the sky. The warmth is going with it. And somewhere in the back of every mind is the same quiet math. Whatever ground they choose in the next few minutes, they are married to it until sunrise. There are no do-overs in the dark. Pick wrong. And the mistake does not wait politely until morning to introduce itself. So they move through the last of the light, reading the land. And every feature they pass is either a shield or a threat. Start with what everyone pictures and then throw it away. The word caveman drops one image into your head and locks it there. A shaggy family tucked deep inside a stone cave. A fire at the mouth. Safe behind thick walls of rock. It is a tidy picture. And for most of prehistory, it is simply wrong. Enormous numbers of early people never lived deep inside caves at all. They were on the move, following the herds and the water and the turning of the seasons, sleeping under rock overhangs, tucked against boulders, in rough little camps they built and abandoned within days. A cave was only one option among many, and it came with a nasty catch. The band reaches one now, a dark mouth in the rock, out of the wind, out of the rain, hidden from view. Every instinct that is cold and tired says, go inside. And that is exactly the trap. The same things that make a cave feel like shelter to an exhausted human make it just as inviting to something covered in fur with a mouthful of teeth. There is a cave in what is now Spain called Teixoneras, and its floor holds a long story of changing hands. For a stretch, people used it. Then the people left, and hyenas and bears and big cats moved in and turned it into a den. Then the animals left, and the people drifted back and forth, over and over, across huge spans of time. The same shelter passing between humans and predators like a key nobody owned. And when the people were inside, they did not spread out and settle deep. The traces they left, the ash, the tools, the litter of daily life, cluster up near the entrance, out where the light still reached. The deep black chambers at the back belong to the animals. So when this band steps toward the mouth of a strange cave in the failing light, and the real question is not, is this warm? The real question is, who is already home? Say they pass on the cave. Now the choosing gets sharper. And it comes down to a handful of things they have to get right without ever saying them out loud. The first is a simple one. Can they see what is coming? Open ground in front of a spot is worth more than any soft floor behind it. Because a predator lives and dies by the last few steps. The ones it closes unseen before the final rush. Take away the cover and you take away the ambush. So they look for a wall at their backs. A cliff face. A big rock. A steep bank. Anything that means nothing can come at them from behind. Put solid stone behind you and open ground in front of you. And in one move, you have cut the directions an attack can come from clean in half. The second thing is sound. They want ground where noise carries. A little rise. A hard surface. A place where a paw in the dry grass 50 feet out will reach a sleeping ear in time to matter. In the dark, hearing is the whole game. Their ears are the only sentries they have. The third thing can kill you if you forget it. And it has nothing to do with what is nearby now. It is about what your nose is telling the rest of the valley. A fresh kill. A rotting carcass. Last night's leftovers. All of it rings like a dinner bell for a long way downwind. And it does not call the timid things. So, a sharp group never beds down next to the remains of its own supper. They eat, and then they move off. And they sleep somewhere. The smell of food will not come drifting through the dark to pull something hungry straight toward their children. And the last thing they check is the way out. A spot with only one way in is also a spot with only one way out. And that door swings against you exactly as hard as it swings for you. Get pinned against a dead end with something between you and open ground. And the best hiding place in the valley becomes a trap with your name on it. Watch what they have actually done here, because it is easy to miss how much skill is buried in it. They have not wandered around and flopped down wherever their legs gave out. They have read a hillside like a map of their own survival. Wall at the back. Open ground in front. Sound carrying across it. The smell of food left far behind. A clear line to run if running is all that is left. Every one of those calls is invisible. None of it takes a tool or a weapon or a single spark of fire. It costs nothing but a pair of eyes that know what to look for and a memory loaded with hard lessons about the ones who chose badly and were not there in the morning to be asked about it. This was the first layer of defense. And in a way, it was the purest one there ever was. Before humans owned a single possession, before they could make fire, before any of the rest of it, they had the power to stand at the edge of nightfall, look out across a piece of ground, and solve it like the life or death puzzle it was. And tiny edges like these, chosen right night after night after night for tens of thousands of years, are the whole difference between a species that makes it through and one that quietly disappears. But reading the land could only carry them so far. They could choose the perfect spot, back to the rock, open ground ahead, a clean way out, and the dark would still come rolling in right on schedule. The eyes would still gather at the edge of the camp and shine. Good ground could improve the odds. It could not push the night backward. To do that, to actually reach out and change what the darkness was allowed to do. Humans were going to need something no other animal on this planet has ever once managed to hold in its hands. It starts with a single spark landing in a handful of dry grass. For a moment, there is almost nothing. A thread of smoke. A faint orange glow buried down in the tinder. Then, a breath of air finds it. And the glow catches. And light climbs up out of the grass and spreads. And for the first time all night, the darkness has an edge to it. There is an inside now, a small ring of shifting orange, and an outside where the black still rules. And right at that border, out past the reach of the flame, a pair of eyes catches the light and glows back for half a second. Then it takes a step backward and is gone. You have probably heard the simple version of this story your whole life. Early humans made fire. Fire scared off the animals. Everybody slept soundly ever after. It is a lovely story. It is also too clean to be true. And getting it right matters more than the fairy tale does. For one thing, humans did not master fire in a single bright morning. Control of fire came slowly, in fits and starts, spread across a staggering reach of time and a scatter of different places. There are traces of early humans using fire that run back an almost dizzying distance into the past. But there is a wide gap between feeding a fire you found, a patch of grassland left burning after a lightning strike, and building one yourself whenever you want, wherever you want, and keeping it alive through a long, cold night. That kind of command came later. And it did not arrive everywhere at once. Different groups in different corners of the world crossed that line at their own pace. So throw out the magic wall of flame that no beast will cross. That was never how it worked. A truly starving predator, or a bold one, could still come in close. Fire was never a fence. What fire actually did was quietly load the deck against anything that hunted in the dark. And it did it in several ways at the same time. Start with the light. A leopard or a hyena owns the night because its eyes drink in the dark far better than ours ever could. That is its home ground. Its whole advantage. Fire chips away at it. It throws a wobbling pool of light that human eyes can work with just fine, while it ruins the animal's night vision every time it edges close enough to look. The one great edge the hunter brought to the kill got a little duller around the fire. Then the smoke. A sleeping human body gives off a scent. And downwind. A scent is a map that leads a hungry animal straight to the meal. Wood smoke smears that map. It is a heavy, drifting, complicated smell that muddies the clean trail of warm bodies on the ground. And smoke does more than hide. Smoke carries for miles. And it carries a message. Where there is smoke, there is fire. And where there is fire, there is that one strange, unpredictable creature that has learned to command it. The smoke told everything downwind that this patch of dark was already taken. Then the sound, that soft, endless crackle and pop of burning wood. To us, it is one of the coziest sounds there is. To an animal creeping in through the brush, it is a wall of noise it cannot read. Coming from the center of a thing it does not understand and has learned the hard way to leave alone. And underneath all of it, the plainest signal of the lot, fire means people. Not one body asleep and helpless on the dirt, but the presence of that upright animal that has done the thing no other animal ever managed. There are hints in the ground of how deliberate this could get. At a prehistoric site in Spain called Valdocaros, researchers studying the ancient hearths have suggested the fires may have been placed with defense in mind, set to help hold threats back from the edges of a living space. We have to say it carefully. May have, could have, because we are reading intentions off scorch marks left in the dirt an unimaginable stretch of time ago. But the direction it points is clear enough. Fire did not erase the fear. It moved the fear a few steps back from the sleeping bodies. And a few steps when a leopard is weighing whether the meal is worth the risk. Can be the whole story. But the biggest thing fire changed might not have been about predators at all. It might have been about the ground itself. Our distant primate relatives mostly do not sleep down on the ground. Chimpanzees and gorillas build a fresh nest up in the trees or in thick cover every single evening, hauling their bodies up out of reach of whatever walks the forest floor at night. Sleeping high is a very old and very sensible way for a primate to survive the dark. And somewhere back along our line, our ancestors came down out of the branches. They started sleeping on the open ground. the most exposed real estate there is. Fire may be a huge part of how they got away with it. A fire on the ground is a claim staked on that ground. It is warmth against the cold seeping up from the dirt. And it is a glowing, smoking, crackling shield thrown up around the most defenseless hours of the day. And here is where it loops back to something we started with. Down on the ground, guarded by flame, a human could finally sink into that deep, heavy sleep our species is so strangely built for, up in a swaying tree, one branch away from a killing fall. No animal ever lets itself drop all the way down, on the ground, with the fire keeping watch. Our deepest sleep may have found its home beside the first fires. And around those fires, something brand new was quietly taking shape. Something that had nothing to do with teeth or claws. Fire gives off light. And light stretches the day. For every animal that came before us, the setting of the sun simply ended things. You found your spot, and you shut down, and you waited out the black. But people, sitting around a fire, had hours of warm light no creature had ever owned before. And they filled those hours. They mended their tools by the flame. They shared out the day's food. They kept the little ones close and warm. They learned the ordinary sounds of the night so well that a single wrong one would snap every head around at once. And they talked. This was the birth of the campfire as the center of everything. The first gathering place our kind ever had. That ring of firelight was the true ancestor of the home. Not four walls and a roof. A circle of light with people inside it and the dark shut out. Fire mattered. It mattered enormously. But a fire always burns down. Left alone, it sinks to embers and then to cold, gray ash. And if only one exhausted person lies sleeping beside it, there is no one left to feed it and no one left to wake. The most important alarm system in the ancient world did not run on wood at all. It ran on something warmer. It had a pulse. It is the middle of the night now, and one person in the camp is awake. The fire that stood so tall a few hours ago has sunk down into a low bed of embers, breathing a dull red in the dark. Almost everyone is asleep, curled close together on the ground, slow breathing. The deep and heavy quiet of people who have earned their rest. But over at the edge of the group, an old woman still has her eyes open. Nobody asked her to. Nobody drew up a watch or handed her the job. Her eyes are simply open in the dark, the way they often are at this hour. And her ears are turned out toward the black beyond the coals. And something out there, some small sound in the grass that does not sit right, has just made her go very, very still, hold on to her for a minute, because she is the answer to the whole thing. And almost nobody guesses her. For 3 chapters now, you have watched a case get built. And by this point, your mind has probably landed on fire. Fire is the thing that saved us. The light, the smoke, the shield thrown up around the sleeping. Fire was a tool, a magnificent one, but it was never the thing that truly kept us alive out there. The thing that kept us alive was each other. Lay one human down alone in the dark, beside the finest fire ever built, and you still have one soft body and one set of senses that has to switch off to rest. The fire burns down. The eyes fall shut. Sooner or later, that person is blind and deaf to the world and completely on their own. But lay a whole group down together, and something happens that is far greater than the bodies on the ground. One sleeping person is prey. A group of sleeping people becomes a machine. A living, breathing alarm system that never fully powers down. And we are not guessing at this. We got to watch it work. There is a people called the Hadza who live in northern Tanzania and still gather much of their food from the land the way human beings did for almost the whole of our history. A team of sleep scientists spent time among them, tracking exactly when people slept and when they woke. Night after night, across hundreds of hours of darkness, they wanted the real shape of a night in the open, not a story about it. What they found is one of those facts that sounds made up the first time you hear it. Across the entire long stretch they studied, all those hundreds of hours, the total amount of time when every single adult in the group was asleep at the very same moment added up to somewhere around 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Out of hundreds of hours. For nearly every second of every one of those nights, at least one person was awake, not standing guard, not forcing themselves to stay up, just awake, or hovering in that shallow half sleep where a strange sound can still reach in and pull you back. Someone shifting to get comfortable, someone stepping away for a moment, someone stirring for no clear reason at all, lying there a while, drifting back down. The coverage was almost total, and it stretched clean across the whole night. And here is the part that makes it remarkable. Nobody organized it. There was no roster, no rule, no leader handing out the hours. It simply happened on its own, every single night. So how does a group pull off round-the-clock cover that nobody is running? The answer is written into our bodies. And it comes down to something scientists call the chronotype, your own private clock. Whether you are a morning person or a night owl is not really a matter of willpower or good habits. A lot of it is just how you are built. And a huge part of how you are built is your age. Teenagers and young adults tend to run late. Their inner clocks push them to stay up deep into the night and then sleep hard into the morning, which is a source of endless grief for every parent trying to get one out of bed for school. Older people run the opposite way. They drift off earlier. They sleep lighter. And they are wide awake before dawn, often well before they would ever choose to be. Small children keep their own wild schedule, dropping off early and then popping awake in the dark for reasons no one has ever fully worked out. Now take all of those mismatched clocks and lay them down together around one bed of embers. The teenagers are still up and murmuring while the elders are already sinking under. By the time the young ones finally go down for good, the oldest are already drifting back toward the surface. A child wakes for an hour in the dead middle of the night when everyone else is gone. Stack those staggered clocks on top of one another and they blanket the whole night, nearly end to end, without a single person ever being told to keep watch. The very thing that makes a household so hard to get out the door in the morning was once the thing that kept that household breathing until sunrise. And this flips one of our oldest ideas about growing old right onto its back. We tend to treat an old person's broken sleep as nothing but a sad little breakdown of the body. The machinery wearing out, grandpa up, wandering the house at 4 a.m. because something inside him has stopped working, right? But look at that same thing through the long lens of survival. And it stops looking like a defect. It starts to look like a job. For most of the human story, the elders who slept lightly and woke in the dark may have been the last line of defense for everyone they loved. When the fire had burned low and the strong young hunters were sunk in the deepest sleep of their lives, dead to the world, it may well have been the grandmothers and the grandfathers who were awake in the black, ears open, watching the coals. The oldest, frailest members of the whole group, standing the most dangerous watch of the night, precisely because their aging bodies would no longer let them sleep straight through it. That old woman at the edge of the camp, gone still at a wrong sound in the grass, was not failing at sleep. She was doing one of the most important jobs a human being has ever done. Now put the last two pieces together and see the full shape of it. The people slept in a tight cluster, and the fire burned in the middle of them, or close at hand. So every way a hunter might try to come in, every angle of approach through the dark, ran up against a warm body that might stir and a bed of coals still throwing its glow. A leopard sliding in toward that camp was not creeping up on a single helpless meal laid out in the open. It was creeping up on a ring with eyes in it, and ears in it, and the low murmur of breathing bodies, and the shifting light of fire, and always, somewhere in that ring, one pair of eyes already open and turned its way. And so, more often than not, the leopard made the smart call. It melted back into the dark it came from and went looking for something easier, something alone, where you slept could stack the odds. Fire could push the dark back a few crucial steps. But the deepest secret to living through the prehistoric night was never a place, and it was never a tool. It was the simple, powerful fact of not being alone. Our ancestors survived the dark by piling their fragile bodies together and turning sleep into something they shared, so that the weakness of any one of them was quietly covered by all the rest. Where you lie down, the fire beside you, the people around you, 3 layers, stacked one on top of another. And together they were enough to carry a soft and defenseless animal through the night, over and over, for thousands upon thousands of years. But our ancestors were never a people who settled for barely enough. Having found a way to live through the night, they set to work making the night better. They began, in small and patient ways, to actually build the place where they slept. And much later, far down the road, one animal that had spent all of prehistory as our enemy in the dark would come walking in out of that dark and take its place inside the circle of firelight. Watch a single pair of hands in the last light of the fire. They gather up an armful of dry grass, stalks snapped, fresh from somewhere nearby, and they lay it down on the bare dirt in a thick, soft heap. The hands smooth it out, press it flat, shape it into something a body can settle into. Then they reach over to the edge of the old fire, scoop up a handful of cool gray ash, and scatter it in a fine layer across the ground beneath that fresh green bedding. It is a small thing to watch, a person making a bed. But inside that quiet little gesture sits one of the most human moves in this entire story. For 4 chapters, we have followed people fighting to live through the night with whatever the world handed them. They read a landscape they did not shape. They coaxed a fire out of wood they did not grow. They slept in a cluster, their own bodies naturally formed. Every layer so far was about using what was already there. But laying down grass and dusting it with ash is something else. This is a person reaching out and reshaping the ground itself, bending a patch of the raw earth into a place that is meant on purpose for a human being to sleep. We know this happened, and we know roughly when, because in one remarkable place, the evidence actually survived. There is a site in South Africa called Border Cave. And in the floor of that cave, researchers uncovered the remains of bedding made from grass. When they worked out the age of it, the number was staggering. That bedding was laid down around 200,000 years ago. 200,000 years. And we can still make out the traces of the plants some person cut and carried in and spread across the ground to lie down on. It is one of the earliest beds we have ever found. And it was not just a loose pile of grass. There was that layer of ash worked into it, down beneath the bedding, and mixed all through it. The researchers who studied Border Cave think that ash was very likely there on purpose. And the reason is one that anybody who has ever slept outdoors will feel in their bones. Because the leopards and the hyenas were never the only things hunting a sleeping human in the dark. We have spent this whole story out at the dramatic edge of the danger. The glowing eyes, the killing teeth, the big predators sliding through the black. But most nights, for most people across all of prehistory, the real torment was smaller than that. And it never went away. Insects, ticks burrowing in to feed, fleas and lice moving through the bedding, mosquitoes whining in the dark, carrying sickness that could kill you slower and just as surely as any lion, crawling things drawn to the warmth of a body lying still on the ground. Next to a charging hyena, these enemies look like nothing. But night after night, year after year, they were relentless, and they were everywhere. And ash fights them. A fine, dry, choking layer of ash makes miserable ground for a small crawling insect. It clogs them and dries them and drives them off. So those people at Border Cave, 200,000 years ago, were not simply throwing down something soft to cushion their bodies. They were building a defended bed, fresh bedding up on top for warmth and comfort, and underneath it a layer of ash to hold off the small hungry things that came for a body in the night. Layer upon layer. Exactly like everything else in this story. One of the earliest beds our kind ever made was already a little fortress. And once people had begun building the place where they slept, the building never stopped. And the enemies of the night kept getting pushed back one at a time. There is one last defender in this story. And this one arrived so late and so quietly that it is easy to miss for almost the entire span of the human night. Every animal watching from the dark was a threat. And then, only a very short time ago, right at the tail end of this long road, somewhere around 15,000 years back, give or take, depending on which evidence you follow, one of those animals crossed the line and came in. A creature that had spent the whole of prehistory as a rival hunter in the black walked out of it, settled down beside our fires, and became the newest living alarm in the ring, the ancestor of the dog asleep at the foot of somebody's bed tonight. Which brings this whole long story home to you, and to the room you are most likely sitting in right now. Look at how you sleep. You lie down inside solid walls. You pull a door shut and turn a lock. There are lights burning out along your street through the whole night. Maybe a camera over the entrance. An alarm wired to the windows. A phone within arm's reach that can call for help in seconds. It could not look more different from a band of people huddled on bare ground around a bed of coals. And underneath, it is the very same design. Every one of those modern comforts is an old prehistoric layer wearing new clothes. Your walls and your locked door are the sheltered spot with the cliff at its back. Your porch light and your street lights are the fire pushing the dark a few steps further off. Your family down the hall, your neighbors, the whole sleeping city breathing around you. That is the group, the ring of bodies that means you never truly sleep alone. And the dog at the foot of the bed is the last predator of the old night, still standing watch. It even explains a few strange things you carry around and have never questioned. That pull to check the door one more time before bed. The small comfort of a light left on in the hall. The way a single wrong sound at 3 a.m. can rip you out of the deepest sleep with your heart already pounding, before your waking mind has any idea why. None of that is silly, and none of it is weakness. It is memory, ancient memory, wired deep into the body. From a time when the dark really was full of things that wanted to eat you. And staying alive until morning was the hardest work you would ever do. So go back one final time to where all of this began. To a body lying on bare ground in the open dark. No walls. No lock. Nothing between soft skin and the night, but a thin ring of firelight and the warm shapes of other people breathing close by. And out past the coals, at the very edge of the glow, a pair of eyes shining back. Those eyes never came any closer. Night after night. For hundreds of thousands of years. They hung at the border of the light, and they did not cross. Not because that soft little animal on the ground had grown fierce. It never grew claws or fangs. It never learned to see in the dark. It stayed exactly as fragile as it had always been. The eyes stayed back for a different reason. They stayed back because that fragile animal had done something no fierce animal ever needed to do. It had learned to pick its ground, to carry its own light into the black, and to lie down in a circle of its own kind. Close enough that someone would always hear the grass move before the dark got too near. We did not conquer the night by becoming fearless. We survived it by sleeping side by side, by listening for one another in the dark, and by keeping one small circle of light alive until morning came.